Hello, and welcome to Words Carry Us, our ongoing series of live stream events featuring readings and interviews from Greenkill in Kingston, New York. Tonight, we're delighted to welcome to the Greenkill stage storyteller, author, actor, Margarita Meyendorff, otherwise known as Morka. Readers of Morka's memoir, DP, Displaced Person, will be delighted by her recently released collection of stories, Flipping the Bird, chronicling her ongoing war against injustice, and readers will find her stories to be loving as well as feisty and funny. I'm Betty Macdonald, writer, storyteller, and host of Words Carry Us, an ongoing series of readings and interviews at Greenkill in Kingston, New York. I'll begin by reading some of my poems and essays. These long COVID days, I could have done so much. I didn't, alas. And here are some haikus. We're done with this year, 2020, good or bad. Time doesn't care. Can't wait for the year to end. Do you think 2021 will be better? Huh. Sun on frozen pond, deep beneath the gleaming ice. The fish are sleeping. Instead of writing a grocery list, I wrote another haiku. Counting syllables, gaily eating my own words, I still won't lose weight. I'll eat conjunctions and sticky punctuations, no weight loss yet. Every autumn, I have trouble believing summer is over. This is called Mom, You Already Told Me That. Mom, you already told me that, my friend Jean quoted her frustrated offspring. Commiserating, I secretly counted my lucky stars. Gratefully, I live alone. Which saves me from having someone remind me how often I repeat myself, or reminding me I'm losing it and forgetting things, or offering help when I don't need help, or think I don't need help. My kids are grown, dealing with the frustrations of their own kids. Most of my friends are more or less contemporaries. And they don't mind if I tell them something more than once. They've probably forgotten anyway, and are happy to hear it again. Here's a piece called, What's with the Doves? What's with the doves? They get in the feeder on the window and brush a lot of the birdseed out onto the ground while they're pecking away. Sometimes they don't even look like they're eating. It just looks like they're brushing the seeds out. Sometimes they just sit on the feeder like kids playing King of the Hill when they're not eating, discouraging the other birds from approaching. Aren't doves supposed to represent peace? These fight with other doves who come near the feeder. It's probably the white doves they release at weddings that represent peace. Those doves are dove gray, a popular color for the mother of the bride to wear at her daughter's wedding. I kind of like doves, but no one I know likes them. No one I know likes them at all because they remind them of pigeons, which they called flying rats when they lived in New York City. I have a more positive connection with pigeons. My brother raised them in our backyard. My brother and my dad built a huge coop up against the wall of the garage. My brother raised pigeons for a long time, white ones as well as the regular ones. When he got tired of raising pigeons after a long time, he slaughtered them, and we ate them. The white ones, which are bred for eating, and the other ones as well. They're called squab when they're on the menu. Today's the anniversary of the death of Today's the anniversary of the death of my son. This is to Angus. His eyes greeny gray like the river, sparkling with sunlight. Me up to my armpits. My son Angus full of life, neck deep in the briny Rappahannock. This is called Lament. My tall grandson Greg arrived from California and stayed with me after his father's death. We did our best to comfort each other. We held each other. I thought back to my aunt telling me near the end of her life, "I don't know how I would get along without you." Then, unable to hide her longing for her dead son, she said, "But you're not David." At last, after so many years of my devotion, she finally acknowledged my help. Yet she wounded me with her loss. How could she have been so unfeeling toward me? As I held my grandson close, I understood my aunt at last. "I love you," I told him. "You are a great comfort to me." I felt, but I did not say, "But you're not, Angus." And now that I've brought you down a bit, I'll read something a little lighter. On the morning of my 16th birthday, my Uncle Sam, visiting from New Jersey, taught me to parallel park with precise, easily understood instructions. 2 hours later, I aced my road test and parked between two poles at the Commonwealth of Virginia DMV in one try, launching me into a life of being an excellent parker. I took the test in my mother's stick-shift Chevrolet. I don't think they let you take the test with a vehicle with an automatic transmission in 1950. For 70 years, using Uncle Sam's instruction, I often get my car into tight spaces, especially with the additional help of the camera in my 5-year-old Subaru Crosstrek, which projects my closeness to the curb and supplies a big red X that stops me from backing into things. When I'm tired, distracted, or stressed, my expertise deserts me. And I have a tendency to back into trees, garbage cans, other cars, but fortunately not people so far. I wish there was a camera in the front to inform me when I'm getting too close to the car up ahead. A few weeks ago, I pulled into a parallel spot at Adams and inadvertently touched the front bumper of an imposing, oversized Jeep. No one noticed. I backed off a little, sure no damage had been done, and exited my car. When I came out of the store, an attractive hipster couple were inspecting the Jeep's front bumper. Spying me, they insisted I had made a crease in the rubber frame around their license plate. I checked it out, and indeed, there was an inch-long slight indent in the black rubber surrounding the plate. They became almost giddy as they pointed out the so-called damage. The indent, unnoticeable to the naked eye, was perceptible only when I ran my finger over it. The owners of the Jeep asked me what I wanted to do about it. Nothing, I replied politely, standing my ground. How about giving us a few bucks so we can have it fixed? Okay, I agreed, in an effort to get rid of them and be on my way. How much do you want? $50. They'd obviously reached agreement with each other, then added, you know how these things are. Even though I knew they were talking about the prices charged by auto body shops, their ready answer that they considered $50 just a few bucks put me off. It occurred to me they may have sized me up as an easy mark because of my apparent elderliness. In their calculation, they hadn't imagined my shameless lack of uprightness. Look, I replied, getting into my car, I'm going to go now. I suggest you take my license plate number and call the cops. As I drove away, I was no longer convinced how the so-called damage had happened. My position was strengthened when I didn't hear from them or the police. This is called My Real Voice. I wish my mother had lived until I developed my real voice. But it was her death that released it and allowed it to emerge. Am I a clone of my mother? Does my very existence stifle the real voices of my children? In Australia's outback, the artists decorate the carved figures, heating wire hangers in the fire until they are red hot, and they burn designs into the wood. Where is that fish I bought there? It was on a ledge with the miniature lions. The winnowing away of objects is a relief. Lost or given away, even the loss is a relief. There's still plenty to worry about. How long can I continue day by day, filled with consciousness or not? Either way, time doesn't care. This is from my childhood. Our car descends the long, steep hill. Fog rises from the mighty James River, envelops the road, shrouding the narrow two-lane bridge at the bottom of the hill in dense mist. Peering through the windshield, I wonder, as I do every morning, what would happen if, when we get to the bottom of the hill, the bridge is not there. In my imagination, the car rolls into the river, crashing on the rocks. The river's not deep, but it's wide, and the rocks are huge. I'm afraid, but I'm more afraid of annoying my dad. He expects me to be brave. Holding my breath, I rely on his confidence that the bridge is still there, even though it's invisible, and he will successfully steer the car to the other side, as he does every day. The daily miracle. The invisible bridge accepts the weight of the Chevrolet and allows us passage through the early morning fog to school. And I have this one last one. I'm a little early with this, but looking toward the last day of winter. Against the luminous gray skies, stark bare branches form an imperfect net through which birds fly freely. Soon tiny buds will appear. In another week, bright green leaves will unfurl against the sky. We can depend on it in this time of not knowing, in this time when we don't know what to expect. And now I'd like to introduce our featured reader, Margarita Meyendorff, or you may know her as Morka. That's what I call her. Morka is the daughter of a Russian baron. She was born displaced in a refugee camp in Germany, far from the opulence of Imperial Russia. That was her birthright. A privileged existence that ended before she was born. Since then, Morka's life has consisted of a series of extraordinary moves. She's performed as an actress, dancer, musician, and storyteller at venues throughout the United States and Europe. Her memoir, DP, Displaced Person, is being translated in Russian for publication in Russia next year. And Margarita's short stories have been published internationally. One of her stories, entitled Rudolph
Nureyev.
She just taught me how to say it. Rudolph Nureyev recently won an honorable mention for the New Millennium Writing Award. Her story, The Elephant Fall, has received a finalist award for short story from New Millennium Writings. Elephant Fall is included in Margarita's second book, Flipping the Bird. So hello, Morka.
Hi, Betty. That was beautiful. Your poems, your writing, your stories. Thank you.
Thank you. It's delightful to be on the stage with you. And something I've always wondered about you is, how did you get the name Morka? Is it a traditional Russian name?
Murka is a nickname. Mur, the first syllable, means purr, like a cat's purr.
Uh-huh.
So mur, 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 mur is like cats purring. So Murka is, is the nickname. In Russian, it's Murik.
Murik.
Which is harder to say for Americans, and somehow it got changed to Murka. I guess with the theater and.
So did you always have that name since you were a child?
In the Russian world, yes.
Yes.
In the English world, in the American world, in school, they didn't want to say it. They didn't want to say Murka. And I think Margaret or Margarita was even worse, was too long for them. They called me Margie.
Margie.
Margie. I very rarely looked up when they called me Margie.
And when did you first know you were a dancer, actor, writer? What came first? And were you always immersed in all of the arts, or did you start with one?
I think I was always immersed one way or the other because my parents were very adamant about introducing me to music, dancing, theater. Theater I did first because we had a Russian school in Nyack where I attended and learned the grammar and speaking, writing, and reading, and that's why I can still do it to this day. But we had a wonderful theater program. All the immigrants who were not doing what they wanted to do, like decorations and directing and playwriting, these were the adults who put on these wonderful children's shows, and we were part of the children's shows.
And that took place in Nyack, where you
Nyack.
lived when you first came to this country,
Right.
and where you were learning English.
Where I was learning English, that's right.
But you were also learning Russian, because you were little.
Well, Russian I spoke at home, but to get the correct grammar and writing skills, yes, we had Russian school where they taught us Russian history, the religion, of course, the Russian Orthodox religion.
And the school was, it was run by your family and your family's
No, by the
friends.
Russian community. It was a once a week thing.
Uh-huh.
It was not. It was a once a week thing. Saturday. I hated it. Going to school for 6 days was too much, but I do appreciate it now that I can read.
Oh, it's
Russian.
an amazing thing to have, it's a language like that.
Yeah.
And your parents were supportive of your artistic abilities, but I read in the new book that he did not want you to be a dancer.
That's correct. It's such a strange dichotomy. I mean, the Russian aristocracy always, danced at balls and things like this. But ballet and being a ballet dancer or any other kind of dancer was, for him, a taboo. He made me play the piano. Aristocrats don't dance, they play the piano. That's the first story. Aristocrats don't dance. But, to that I owe my music abilities, and I'm glad to know that. But had he given me a chance to dance, I would have been dancing.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we talked about dance. I also studied dance as a kid, but I studied tap dance for years and years. When you got to this country, you were 5 years old. You
Three.
You were 3 years
Three.
old,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't remember that. You don't remember Germany.
I don't remember the displaced persons camp, no. I wrote about it from stories from mostly my brother, who helped me, and from letters that the correspondence at the time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And did your whole family come here at the same time?
My mother, my father, my 2 half-brothers, and myself.
You all came together
Yes,
and went to live in Nyack.
yeah.
And can you say a little bit about Nyack and the elephant stalls?
Oh, that was. We lived. It was called Clarkstown Country Club, and it was run by this extraordinary man. I mean, obviously, we didn't really know who he was until later. I didn't know his story until I started writing my book, and then I researched him. He was a yoga guru, the tantric kind of yoga with all sorts of, wild and crazy positions, breathings. There was sexuality in it. He was called the Great Om. He was put in jail a couple of times for his shenanigans. He was extremely wealthy, and he found this Clarkstown Country Club. That was his huge estate. And only in the 40s, during the Great Depression, he lost everything, just about everything, except those homes,
Right.
which he turned into apartments. And the elephants, he actually had 3 elephants, and it was homes for the circus animals. And peacocks, I remember peacocks walking around. It was a wild place. And the elephant stalls were made into apartments. And that's where we lived. That was our first home, the elephant stalls. And later, when my cousin approached him one day and asked if they could set up a volleyball field, he was very into physical sports and yoga and everything. Of course, he had no idea who was living in his apartments.
He didn't know who was there?
No, he had no idea that there were Russian immigrants, and we weren't the only family there. He had a manager that managed everything, but he himself had no idea who was living.
So somebody else managed to get you there.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
How amazing. How old were you when you moved out of the elephant stalls?
We probably were there for a couple of years before we moved into the actual village of Nyack.
Oh, and that's where you grew up?
That's
in
where I grew
Nyack,
up, yes.
in regular apartments?
Regular homes and apartments. Apartments, mostly.
Okay. When you relocated, did your larger family go with you? Were you in when you moved in Nyack?
Yes, we all moved together. My brothers were already older, and by the time I was 5, they were already out and about and going into colleges and universities and things like this. So basically it was my mother, my father, and myself.
Great.
For a majority of that time. Yeah.
But when you were growing up in the United States, you were very aware of being Russian.
Oh, absolutely. We were part of a very large Russian community. The Tolstoy Foundation was just 5 miles away from Nyack, where Leo Tolstoy's daughter set up this entire farm and places where she brought Eastern Europeans, not just Russians, but Eastern Europeans and from Turkey. I remember the people from Turkey coming to live in these homes that she set up for this. She created the Tolstoy Foundation, which brought immigrants to the United States. And that's where my father decided to go to church. They had a church there, and they had a church in Nyack. So it's a very large Russian community. Plus, the school was part of the Nyack church.
So he hadn't been going to church before that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he had.
no.
Oh, but he...
Russian Orthodox was a very large part of his life. And mine, probably up until I was 16.
And then what happened when you were 16?
You have to read DP, The Displaced Persons, to find out what happened.
I did read it.
What happened? It was a big to-do. But at the same time, I have to say, I am deeply connected to the music, the liturgy. It's beautiful. The paintings, the icons, I'm aesthetically connected to the Russian
Right.
Orthodox Church, and will always be
It's in your blood.
in my blood.
Would you like to read something that you've written?
Well, since you've mentioned Rudolf Nureyev,
Yes, him, yes.
I would love to read Rudolf Nureyev. I have performed this for Read 650 in New York City and a few other places. Betty and I actually worked together on Read 650, and we've read stories on the same platform.
Right, right.
Great venue for writers. But here's Rudolf Nureyev. It was 1961, and I was entering puberty and madly, miserably in love with Rudolf Nureyev. I saw us as soulmates and rebels. We had so much in common. He was a peasant from Siberia who had leapt to fame with the Kirov Ballet and defected at the airport in Paris. I was 14, an immigrant rebelling against my parents in Nyack, New York. I, too, wanted to defect. Yet, what were the chances we would ever meet? The thought that Nureyev would never know me made me weep, even as I gazed at the poster of him flying past in the grandest of jetés. I was 13 when Nureyev defected at the Bourget airport in Paris while on a European tour, and overnight became an international sensation. I knew about Nureyev because my friend Mika had a full-sized poster of him tacked to her wall in her bedroom. He was beyond handsome, with his high Siberian near Tatar cheekbones, full lips, and arching muscled thighs. Mika and I would sit in front of the poster and for hours allow our fantasies about dancing with Nureyev spin out of control. Mika's parents, also Russian emigres, bought tickets to see Nureyev at the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. I tied myself to the piano and promised my own parents years of practice if they would just let me go to the show with Mika. By some God-given miracle, my father acquiesced. The date arrived. I was going to see Nureyev in the Nutcracker at the Met. We took our seats, and along with hundreds of people in the audience, were soon mesmerized by Nureyev's leaps, his cat-like movements, and his sensual pas de deux, which surpassed even my highest expectations. He was beyond human. He was feline, sexual, those arched thighs, those full lips, those high cheekbones. I had to get closer, not only to Nureyev, but to being a star. I was not without credits. When I was 7 years old, I had performed as a rooster, complete with a huge red feathered tail that swung as I moved. I had appeared front and center in a Russian Christmas play on a stage in New York City and sung a Russian equivalent of cock-a-doodle-doo, kukariku, that had to conclude in a high C. I looked down at the front row at 5 black-bearded Russian priests. They scared me, made me feel I would fail. I hit the high note anyway. The Russian Orthodox priests' mouths flew open in a collective gasp, a minute pause, and then the concert hall burst out in applause and cheers. I stood there, resplendent in my red and gold feathers, my plumy tail erect. I basked in the applause. The clapping went on and on. In that moment, I felt loved. Loved for hitting the right note. Loved without reservation. Like Nureyev, I was swept up in the moment, and in a sense, I never left. We were right for each other, and it was only a matter of time. At the Nutcracker curtain call, the audience, in mad abandon, jumped to their feet. During the pandemonium, Mika grabbed my arm, and we ran and ducked behind the curtain and found ourselves backstage in the midst of Fantasyland. Snowflake ballerinas, uniformed soldiers, fairies, mice, Russian, Chinese, Arab, and Spanish dancers. Speaking in Russian, we pretended that we belonged. A dancer in harlequin tights led us to Nureyev's dressing room. After what seemed an eternity, Nureyev emerged, as magnificent as on stage. His cat-like eyes looked into mine, those sensuous lips spoke to me. We exchanged some breathless pleasantries in Russian. "Какие вы прекрасные! How magnificent you are," he said. Nureyev seemed thrilled to meet two 14-year-old girls and invited us to accompany him to his limousine. As we left by the stage door, the three of us were greeted by a crowd waiting to get a glimpse of him. Mika and I were the blessed. I had him by the right arm and Mika by the left. Before disappearing into his limousine, Nureyev leaned over and kissed each of us on the cheek. My cheek burned with the imprint of his lips, and I was branded forever with the promise of a blazing future. Romance, stardom, love would all be mine.
What a beautiful story. Aren't you lucky your dad let you go?
Yes.
Would you have gone anyway if he hadn't?
I couldn't. I was just, there was no way.
There was no way to do it on your own.
There was no way to do it. He let me go.
So not only did Morka and I share the stage for Read 650, especially the best of at Vassar College last year, or maybe it was the year before. I can't keep up with what year it is anymore. And we also shared the stage for TMI. We were both cast as the lucky ones as part of the remarkable collaborative theater piece, What to Expect When You're Not Expecting. Would you like to read again? Read us another of your wonderful essays.
Okay. Right, and these are from all these that I'm reading tonight are they're performance pieces, but I also included them in my new book called Flipping the Bird, which is just about to come out on Amazon, probably next week. But this one, I enjoy this one too. The Happening. There's a Halloween costume party tonight up in Palinville, Lynn said on the phone. I think we should go. It's supposed to be a happening. Rumor has it that the all-male band is performing naked. But what are we wearing? Do you have a costume? I don't have a costume, I said. No worries. I'll meet you at your house in an hour. Find something to put on, she said. It'll be fun. And the phone clicked. Leave it to Lynn, my good friend, a modern dancer and choreographer extraordinaire, to dig up this party in Palinville, a tiny village in upstate New York in the middle of nowhere. My children were with my ex-husband, and I had the night off. Why not? As I stood loading dirty clothes into the washing machine, I glanced up at the wall of my laundry room at the single decoration, a bright red communist flag with the yellow hammer and sickle insignia in the center. A few years back, I had bought this flag in Moscow and displayed it over the washing machine to depict my daily proletariat tasks. My inner voice whispered, "Wear it. Could I go wrapped in a communist flag? After all, Gorbachev's perestroika was in full effect in Russia." I dumped the dirty clothes into the washer, took down the flag, ran upstairs and stripped. I wrapped the flag around me twice. The mini flag dress fit perfectly from just above my breasts to just above my knees, the hammer and sickle making a perfect design in the middle of my body. I pulled up my hair for formal flair, donned red high heels, and pinned several Russian military medals to my chest. If the band was appearing naked, I could be a Russian general wearing a flag. With safety pins holding me and the flag together, I could hardly walk, much less sit or dance for fear of unraveling. The door opened, and I gasped as Lynn walked in, dressed as the ghost of Martha Graham, holding a large lit candelabra in her black gloved hands. Her face was white with powder, eyes outlined in heavy black no lipstick. She was wearing a long, tight black dress with a turtleneck collar, and her hair was pulled back tight in a bun with chopsticks protruding. Lynn bore an uncanny resemblance to Martha anyway, but in this outfit, she embodied her. Lynn was dressed to the gills. I was half naked. Very careful not to disturb the safety pins and chopsticks, we climbed into the car and headed for the party. We were famished because, in the excitement, we had forgotten to eat. The only recourse was to stop at the drive-through Burger King window at the thruway entrance. We managed to eat our Whoppers without too much movement and continued on our way. The party was packed with people who were on various levels of alcohol and marijuana highs. Everyone was in a tizzy, awaiting the advertised naked musicians. When 4 nice-looking musicians finally did appear, yes, naked, with glow paint on their members, the crowd roared in appreciation. From my perspective, they were a partial disappointment as they quickly hid behind their instruments, the guitar and cello players more successfully than the saxophonist. The rest of the evening, Lynn floated through the crowd with the lit candelabra, and I fussed with my communist flag mini dress as the heavy Soviet medals were threatening to open and expose my breasts. The next day, the Kingston Freeman ran an article on the front page. "Nudity and commies in Palinville," and named names. A few prominent Woodstock citizens who attended. Had I known there was a right-wing reporter at the gathering, I would have let my flag slip to reveal my left-wing breast and really give him something to write about.
Thank you. So that's in your new book, Flipping the Bird.
Yes.
So how did you come to write that? What was the impetus? You had already written the DP, Displaced Person book.
Right. Besides all the performance pieces that I had gotten and written for those venues, I realized that I still had some stories inside me. Mm-hmm. I still had a few stories that I wanted to talk about. So the fact that I broke my ankle in January of this year in Mexico
Oh.
and had to fly home with a broken ankle and have surgery. Then COVID came. So when my ankle was healing, I had no place to go. That's what happened. So there I was. And I started to write again. I started to write, and first I wrote for myself, just to have something to do, and then I realized, wait a second, it's accruing. I have a mass of stories here. And so then I decided 30 was a good number.
30 stories, you just arbitrarily decided.
Arbitrarily I decided it was 30 was a good number.
Can you give us an idea of what some of the other stories are?
Well, for example, the Elephant Fall is about a friend of mine who survived falling from an elephant in Thailand.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
She was riding the elephant?
She was riding the elephant. And I love that story. It's really about, it's actually about the fall, yes, but it's more. It's about our relationship, obviously. And it's about elephants and their healing power and how it all came about, and the fact that she was in Thailand and in a hospital in Thailand, and these people believed in elephant healing power, and I was fascinated.
And were you there, or were you?
No, I was home.
You were home, but you knew this was going on.
I knew that it happened, and for a long time I didn't hear from Donna. Obviously, she was in very bad shape. But when finally she called, we would talk for a long period of time. I also realized that I had 3 elephants at home that my mother gave me. Elephants have to have their, like statues of elephants, have to have their trunks up for good luck. And I looked at my elephants, and all 3 of them had their trunks up. So that became kind of like like my little icon for Donna when she was healing from that accident. But it was quite an event. So that's the story about that, Elephant Fall.
And that's the story you got an award for.
Yeah, just 2 days ago.
That's so exciting.
I know.
So 30 stories, is that what you said?
I have about 25 stories. Some of them are plays, one-act plays. And then I took a long leap and wrote a screenplay.
Oh, wow. What fun.
It's a short screenplay, but it's
And it's in that book.
in the book, yeah.
And that book just came out this week?
Yes, the ebook is out already. It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
And the paperback will be there probably by the beginning of this week.
Beginning of this week.
Beginning of this week. It's there. Everything's done. It's just a matter of putting it up on Amazon.
This is very exciting. Another book by Morika. Yes. Yes, I enjoyed so much reading both books, but this one so much more recently.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have another story for us?
Do we have time?
We do. We do.
Okay. I'm going back in time now. This is called chewing gum. I am 6 years old and obsessed with chewing gum. Gum is a forbidden substance. My parents don't allow me to chew it. Maybe chewing gum is not an aristocratic thing to do, and we are aristocrats. Maybe it's an American custom, and we are Russian, and Russians don't chew gum. I don't know. All I know is that I'm a Russian aristocrat, and for this little baroness, chewing gum is as desirable as it is forbidden. I start out with stealing gum from the grocery store on the corner of Main Street and Franklin and Nyack, where my parents do their weekly shopping. I love Bazooka the best. It's big in the mouth, and I love the pink color, the sugary texture, and the colorful comics that go with the label. I can't read the comics, as I don't read English yet, but I love the pictures. I steal the gum, bring it home, hide it under my pillow in my bed, and chew it after my father and I recite the Russian Orthodox night prayer in Church Slavonic. Heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of truth, who art everywhere and fulfilling all the treasure of good and giver of life, come and abide in me and cleanse me from all evil. Save me. Sometimes I fall asleep chewing gum and find the wad next to me in the morning, a big, pink, cold lump of goo. I promptly put the wad back in my mouth, chew it a little, drain all the sugar out, climb out of bed, and finally spit it into the toilet and flush. All traces gone. Inevitably, I am caught stealing the gum. We are in the store, and I swipe the gum and hold it in my pockets, one pack in each pocket. My hands in my pockets for so long rouses my parents' suspicions, and finally they ask me to take my hands out of my pockets and show them everything I have. I'm so ashamed. My parents escort me to the checkout lady. With the bazooka in my hand and in broken English, I have to confess to the cashier that I have taken the gum without paying for it. Nothing like this has ever happened. I have shamed my parents, all Russians, disgraced the aristocracy. I have blasphemed the Eastern Orthodox God who will now refuse to save me. I apologize and tell everyone standing around in my heavily accented English, I will never steal gum again. And I don't. I graduate from stealing gum to scraping up old gum from the sidewalk, putting it in my mouth, and chewing it. I enjoy the vestiges of mintiness and the sweetness that remain. Some of the pieces have a little gravel or dust stuck to them. No matter, it is gum, and I love it. Chewing sidewalk gum goes on for a while until finally I get an abscess on my lip. The abscess is like a large pimple that grows and grows. No one has a clue where this pimple has come from, but I have my suspicions. My punishment has begun. In the future, whenever I'm offered gum, even when someone tempts me with a demonstration of a snap and a crackle and a surreal, expanding, big, bright bubble of neon pink bazooka, my answer is vehement: no thanks. Russian aristocracy notwithstanding, I have chewed my last. But my rebellion has just begun, hidden sometimes like a partisan, and other times in full revolt.
So that was the beginning of your revolt.
That was the beginning. Yes, probably.
So I get the feeling that you led a pretty wild life for a while.
I did. Today, I just edited a Russian translation of chapter 17 in my book. I was shocked at myself because so much time has gone by, and I hadn't read it in a while. I hadn't looked back at
This is your first book that
the
you're
first book, yes.
that you're translating.
That translating. The translator sends me the translation, and I read it, and I make corrections, and that's my edit. And I just was shocked at myself as an adolescent, what happened. I mean, and in Russian, there's something very extraordinary.
It sounds worse in Russian.
No, it doesn't sound worse in Russian, but it's very interesting in Russian. And reading it in Russian, it's very classy. It's very classy, and it scared me what I had gone through as an adolescent.
So now you have to give us a hint of what you did.
Well, I was racing cars on the Garden State Parkway at night.
With wild boys.
With wild boys, with big engines, and making money.
Betting on
Betting.
Yes.
Betting. People were betting on me, or not on me, and when I won, I would get the money.
How exciting. How old were you then?
Probably 17,
Wow.
16, 17. I was 17 years old.
So eventually you left your wild ways behind? You didn't.
Eventually. Yes, I finally escaped to Nyack. I'm sorry, I escaped from Nyack and went to live in New York City.
Where you were less wild?
I was less wild because I was very, very poor. I couldn't do anything. No. No, I tried to concentrate on theater. I tried to concentrate on dance and theater and acting classes and everything. I tried to create something for myself. And I was fortunate. I got a show out of town.
Nice.
And I stayed out of town for a long time. But I have to say that the writing, it came about suddenly, but I knew I had a story in me when I was 12 years old. I knew it.
You definitely have a story.
And it was having a father who was, fighting cavalry against the Soviet army, to him seeing people walk on the moon.
Yes.
And it just, my home life at home was very, very different from everybody else.
Right. Right. So that reference you just made was your father in Estonia fighting the Bolsheviks.
Yes,
And he
the
was
Soviets. Hmm.
and he was riding a horse with a sword.
He was in the cavalry. Yes,
And they had guns.
they had tanks.
Tanks. This has been delightful speaking with you. I knew a little about your story from your reading your books, but now I know more.
It's delightful to be here. I am so happy that you have this wonderful venue here, and it's a wonderful venue. It's a beautiful space, and it's not Zoom.
It's not Zoom, no. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Betty.
Thanks also to Greenkill and to David Schell, who directs and makes things happen here.
Mm-hmm.
And don't miss the excellent exhibit this month of the work of Richard Traitner. It's worth coming over here to see it. Or watch a video on Facebook, on the Greenkill site. There's a video of Richard's work, and it's outstanding and really worth seeing. And thanks especially to our audience tuning in on YouTube. I hope you've enjoyed Words Carry Us for February 17th, 2021. Good night.